Hello, everybody. Slightly Slanted Sleuth today, joined with Phil Langdon and Jack Frater Deus Veritas. And we're going to talk about spiritual matters, or anything that pretty much comes up, and we're going to discuss some give and take between what symbolism is and our reality really is. And right here we have Phil Langdon. He's an author. He's an upstanding gentleman. He's a hard worker, and he's a guide, and he's my mentor, my friend, Phil Langdon. Why don't you take it away, Phil, and tell us a little about yourself.
Hi, thanks, Steve. Hi, guys. Yeah, just to say, you're probably familiar with us anyway, anyone listening. So my name is Phil. I'm from London. I talk about illumination and the occult and religion and spiritual issues in general, because you get a really good idea of it when you find illumination. So.
And we got Jack now. Sorry, Phil.
Hey, Jack.
But we got Jack, Phil, Jack.
Phil, how you doing, man?
Hey, all right, Jack.
Yeah, it's great to see you, man.
Same.
It's been too long since we video chatted, man.
Yeah, that's right, on Skype.
Yeah,
oh,
man.
That was terrible. My computer overheats. It's the same laptop.
Yeah.
This one.
Yeah.
But it cut us off, I remember, in the middle of the conversation.
It was difficult, I remember. Yeah.
So you can't have a flowing conversation when the tech doesn't work,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But this Zoom thing is really good.
Yeah, it's Chinese, isn't it?
I think it is. It might be.
What does that matter, Jack?
How you doing, Jack, anyway?
I'm very well. I'm really good. I mean,
good. Where are you, man? Where are you?
San Diego.
Blimey. Right.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm a long way from home. Yeah. Well, damn, man. When I came back to England in October, I was going to try and meet you.
Yeah.
And I was only back for 12 days because of work, and I was murdered by the jet lag for like a week.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But next time I come, when this whole COVID-19 thing's all blown over, I'll have to come through, man.
Yeah, sure. I'm pretty busy as well, and it is every day. There's no way of knowing exactly what's going to happen by the end of the day, because things change on the day for me. Shift wise, you know what I mean, that sort of thing, and friends coming out of the blue and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So it was difficult for me as well. I didn't have all the time. I only had a certain amount of time, So
yeah. Never mind.
Yeah, man.
Here we are. So yeah, how are you, Steve?
Yeah.
I'm pretty good. Still breathing and farting. I ain't coughing and I ain't in one. So I guess all's good on the front of my world anyway.
Cool.
So what do you guys want to talk about? I mean, Jack, I know you had a few questions for Phil, and several other people did too as they join us. And I just want to say hi to a couple people in the chat, Matt Mosteller, Fractal Truth, and anybody else who's in here. Appreciate you coming and joining us. And if you have any questions, please put your questions in all caps, and I'll try to get it through. But yeah. So, Jack, how's the weather down there?
We've had a low pressure system in San Diego for the past like 4 weeks. So it's been like raining on and off most days. It's unbelievable. It's like being in England. It's been crazy because usually it's just sunny and hot this time of year. But yeah, we've had more rain in the last 3 months. I think what do they say, since records began? Must be all that. I think it's all that climate alarmism that's caused it. So yeah.
Yeah, it's been snowing here and cold, but I mean, I'm in Minnesota. What about you, Phil? How's the blimey weather over there? And
it's very nice, actually. Yeah, we've just had a week of blazing sunshine and warm weather, a little bit of coldy wind, but nothing to write home about. And now it's okay. It rained a bit today. That's it.
Yeah, of course it did. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I said, of course it did.
Yeah, it has to rain at some point.
Yeah.
So,
go on, Steve.
Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead, bud.
So, I mean, I was just going to bring up first of all that that chat. Me and Steve did a chat on Saturday, and we were expecting you to come on, and there were some wires that got crossed.
I got an email on Saturday saying come on tomorrow, so I thought, right, it's Sunday, got a show on Sunday, 9 o'clock. See?
Yeah.
That's it. So I was out the rest of the day, and I was actually out at 9 o'clock thinking I'll be all right, it's tomorrow.
Yeah, because I emailed you late at night, and I forgot about the time difference.
Right. I didn't even check, to be honest, because I saw it Saturday morning. It wasn't there Friday night.
Right.
You know, so I just think, well, that's tomorrow, which is Sunday. So,
right. Sorry. And I knew I kind of guessed that after you didn't show up, and I figured that was the
right.
Case. That's exactly
right.
Yeah.
No big deal.
So
go on, Jack.
So my point was, so what did we do, Steve? I started opening random pages from Pistis Sophia, but more importantly, I opened it just because you can, once you understand the anagogic layer of exegesis, you can pull open any scripture at any point and read it and understand what it's communicating at a deep level. But what was interesting, because we opened up the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, and when Krishna's talking to Arjuna about basically Roger Penrose's theory on the cyclical conforming, what's it called, the cyclic
conformal cyclical cosmology.
Right. Yeah. And what I found was amazing is that it was delineated there in the Bhagavad Gita in the most sublime language. Everything that Penrose is saying. I think there's a slight difference between Penrose and what the Bhagavad Gita was saying, but it was like there. It was kind of amazing because Krishna was talking about how he brings everything back in at the end of the universal cycle, and he'll send it forth again through his prakriti, was the term he uses, which is the abyss, right? So yeah, I was wondering if you could like elucidate on that, Phil.
Yeah.
Wonderful question.
The issue to understand there is that at the extreme expansion of whatever cosmic cycle you're in, once the black holes have all evaporated, there's nothing to say what scale there is. So the fact that scale is overridden means that it will start again from scratch. So the scale once.
Wow.
Right.
Dude.
So am I right in saying, like, once all the black holes dissipate, you basically go back to the abyss because there's nothing there again? It's just a void once again.
Basically, yeah. Basically, the issue with scale, you see, when you don't have any indication of size, the only thing that has an indication of size is the light. It's actually about 5 millimeters long. That's the only thing that you can measure anything from in the abyss.
Right.
In those terms. So that always has its own, its own size, its own scale. But scale is really a relative thing. It's about measuring things against each other, one thing is larger than another, etc., etc. Do you know what I mean?
So for example, if you give me 3 angles of a triangle and only 3 angles of a triangle that equal 180 degrees, I have no way of quantifying the size of that triangle. I can only know the geometry of it, but I can never know the magnitude of the scale.
That's right.
Right. Okay, I understand.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
So when go ahead, Phil.
No, sorry, Matt. Just to elucidate that, once everything is dissipated back to its original state, then you're at the original state of the cosmos again, basically, because there's nothing to measure any time anymore.
Okay.
You see, so it's basically returned to its timeless state. So it starts again.
For timelessness to exist, time has to exist, right? I mean,
No, well, time exists within a timeless setting. Timelessness is the eternal. That's the eternal thing, as it were, the eternal issue. Time is something that occurs within its bounds, as it were, even though it's boundless. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And what about the logos? So say you have the dissipation of all the black holes, because the logos is within the center of all these black holes, right?
Well, technically it's not. You see, what goes on is that a black hole is the event horizon of a black hole is where t or time equals 0 again.
Right.
That's the same condition as the abyss outside the cosmic expansion.
Right. Yeah. That's what I meant. It's a singular condition in every black hole, right? So my question is, when there's that, after Hawking radiation has played out and all the black holes dissipate and we return to the abyss, where does that leave the logos in that?
What do you mean? It's the creative principle. It just goes back to being a creative principle again. It's always there. So if the cosmos has finished expanding, its influence is felt in the end. Because it's so small, it sounds preposterous, right? But I'll give you two examples of resonance. You're familiar with the idea of resonance?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Right. So I don't know whether you saw what I did with that UFO thing a few years ago. I tied a piece of fishing line between two trees really tightly, and I suspended a UFO model from it. And it was early in the morning, and it was really quiet. And about 10 o'clock in the morning, there was this very, very gentle breeze that started coming through the scene, right? Really gentle breeze. And all of a sudden, the model on the string starts humming, and it gets louder and louder. And the power of the sound coming out of it just built, and it went to basically the limit of the material.
Right.
It was extremely loud. Anyone in the vicinity would have heard it.
Okay.
See, so if you think that the tiny input of a little bit of wind on a fishing line string, even though it's tight like a guitar string, the constant input of a tiny influence is going to resonate and build.
Right. I understand. So say you let me see if I can use an analogy. So if you input some current into a DC motor, and let's say it's an ideal DC motor, so there's no frictional forces on it. You know how they model black boxes in engineering of ideal components? Say you keep inputting the same amount of current, but there's no resistivity to basically dissipate that input. It's basically going to start spinning faster and faster and faster and faster until the limit of the material would make it like just explode in all directions, right?
Right.
So is that a good analogy to what you're saying?
Yeah, that's a fair analogy. So in physics, F equals ma. Force equals mass times acceleration. So if you apply constant force, even though the force is the same that you're applying to an object, if you keep applying it, the object will accelerate.
So like a ramp input, basically.
I'm not familiar with that.
It's just if you have an X, Y, and X axes, it's just not an exponential input where, when current is turned on, you've got this exponential gain. So a ramp is just a steady increase in input at a linear rate, not a geometric rate of input.
Oh, I see what you mean. I guess I see what you mean. The expansion of the cosmos is always described as being basically exponential, though.
Right. Okay. Okay.
And that's interesting because I can't remember what context this is in, but I've remember hearing a time ago about the Creator adding and multiplying at the same time. So there's a whole slew of things going on at once with the expansion of the cosmos. It's not just a simple concept of a resonant input, a constant input with the light constantly in the abyss. It's constantly having an effect, as it were. So it generates it generates an expansion. I mean, to be honest, the Kabbalists tend to describe this sort of thing because it's very difficult to explain. They tend to say something like, because the creator exists, the cosmos will exist, and because the cosmos exists, the creator will exist. You know, they kind of get round the technical chat of where exactly is it, because it's thought of in ancient times as the center of the cosmos, and yet simple duality relationships will automatically tell you that the cosmos and all the stuff in its confines is relative, which is exactly what modern physics has come to know. See what I mean? That's an automatic conclusion. It's not something that can be argued. It's not my opinion. It's like an automatic conclusion from duality logic.
Right.
You know.
Okay.
So one more thing I wanted to say, when you say the DC circuit will create a faster and faster spin, basically you're getting an accelerating expansion with the cosmos, which has been confirmed as well. Yeah, so the expansion is always accelerating, always.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting. Well, not interesting, it's fascinating.
So that resonance is it the light itself in the abyss that causes that resonance that you're talking about? Yeah.
I mean, we don't know. Where the normal descriptions of the start of the cosmos are that it goes bang, just like that, and it just suddenly flashes into existence, you know. But we don't know about the initial conditions. We don't know how much of this resonance metaphor, or how literal to take that resonance metaphor.
Oh, okay.
And how long it takes for the universe to take on a decent size. Maybe it's like the number series from 0, 1, and infinity. When you go towards 1, you're not heading towards infinity yet. The number 1 is this definite sort of bridge, if you like. It's a barrier. So once you go past 1, then you can accelerate. So that's how I'm seeing it.
Yeah, what it's called it's some sort of equation, and Mandelbrot too. You the same what you just said. If there's a number certain above like 2 point something, it expands outside of the system or whatever. But that just came to mind when you said that.
You know, like the expansion of a child, a human being. It starts with a single egg.
Right.
So there's a process before it starts expanding. So there's an establishment of something first, and then once that's established, then there's the expansion.
Gotcha.
Right.
That's how it automatically sort of sits in my mind, as it were.
Okay, so our creator, the demiurge, is what we're talking about here, right?
Yeah.
That generates the cosmos.
Yeah.
That we generate. The thing that which generates us. Now this may be too big of a question to ask, but how can we make the jump of us creating the light by illumination to link it to, is that, the link to the cosmos being generated on a physical level? How do you make that connection?
Are you asking how do I know that?
No, I'm not asking you how you know that. I know how you know that. I want you to see if you can articulate an answer to what I've just asked you. What is the connection? I mean, the physical connection that we create, and what's the process therein? You know what I mean?
Okay. You mean a simple?
Yeah, a layman's way of looking at it, right?
You mean a simple way of encapsulating that principle?
Correct. How we create the only begotten, and the only begotten is the generation of the cosmos, and yada yada yada. The seed in the Bible. Yes.
Right. It's very easy, man. Just think of a seed you plant in the ground that grows into a bush or a tree, and of course it grows flowers that are pollinated, and they reproduce the original seed as the product of their whole process.
And the dirt that they're planted in.
Say again?
And the dirt that they're planted in. Because of the decay of the previous leaves and whatnot.
Well, you can go into all sorts of details about the metaphor there.
Yeah, it's the seed to seed, right? That you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean the planting the seed in the ground is the creator in the abyss. The abyss is the ground, the earth, the dirt, in which you plant a diamond that grows into a tree that reproduces diamonds.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
That sort of thing, you see.
Yeah, I always like to use an apple tree as an example because the fruit, the way I understood it is that the seed recreates the same thing that created it, basically.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, there's a differentiation between this metaphysical principle than rather, because say man and woman copulate and have a child, that child isn't the thing that created it, so to speak. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, it is, because we created it in the first place.
Yeah, but your son isn't your father.
But it is in all these creation myths, is it not? Right, Phil?
What's that? Sorry. Oh,
I mean, we lost you.
No. I thought I thought you were going to say some more.
No, but in the creation myths, that's pretty much what it's saying, right? I mean, people get turned off because they think that they're talking about ancestral relationships and stuff, right? Am I right there? I mean, I've heard people.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, now, if I elaborate on that, I mean from a literal perspective.
Yeah, so, I agree. That's a good question.
You have a child, man and women, copulate and have a child, right? And even though you have a son, say you have a son, that your son is not the thing that created you. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's just the level of application. So when it comes to human beings, they're usually seen in the occult world, as it were, as representing aspects of God. So the male is the male aspect of God, and the female is the goddess. And the child is the perfect union of their wholeness.
Right.
It's
right.
the harmonious unification of the two opposites. Right. So it's applied at that level. When you're looking at seeds, reproducing new seeds, you could think of the sperm and the egg, as akin to pollination, a flower's pollination. So you can apply it to that place there. I've noticed that things aren't always applicable as they're read to every level.
Of course.
Do you know what I mean? It depends on.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
Depends on the context and how much information you're using, so to speak.
Yeah.
What sort of picture you're painting, how much you're taking in. Yeah. How much of the family, because you could talk about an extended family. Like in Victorian times, people used to live in large houses. There'd be the grandchildren, the parents, the grandparents, even the great-grandparents and servants. And you could look at all of that as different aspects of a single person's psyche. If you think of Carl Jung applying the human psyche to the tree of life.
Did he do that?
Say again?
Did he do that, Jung?
Yeah.
Did he extrapolate?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've read Aeon by Jung. And there's about 4 chapters in there where he questions the symbology of a fish.
Right.
Look, I got the book here. I can read out the title of the chapters here. There's like so the ego. I'll read through all the. Okay, so in the third part of the book, there's the alchemical interpretation of the fish, background to the psychology of Christian alchemical symbolism, Gnostic symbols of the self, the structure and dynamics of the self. Oh, sorry, no, I've gone too far. Let me just read it all again. So these are the titles of each chapters. So 1, the ego, the shadow, the syzygy, anima and animus, the self, Christ as a symbol of self, the sign of the fishes, the prophecies of Nostradamus, the historical significance of the fish, the ambivalence of the fish symbol, the fish in alchemy, the alchemical interpretation of the fish. He thought a lot about the fish. That's my point. You see, there's 4 or 5 chapters there with the fish.
Hmm.
So obviously we know from your exegesis that the fish pertains to the logos, basically.
Well, it's you become the fish in the ocean looking at the logos.
Right, yeah. See, now I wondered, is this the derivation of the sign of Pisces, that you have two fish with their tails tied? Because one fish is you in the waters and the other fish is the logos, and there's the connection between you and the logos that's been established, hence the two fish are tied at their tail.
You can certainly apply the logos to every single zodiac sign.
We did that. Yeah, we did that last week, didn't we?
Right.
Yes, we did.
With some success as well. I mean,
yeah, you will. Yeah, simply because they're all ways of looking at the creator.
right.
They're just different aspects of the one thing that has all these different associations with it. It's a multifaceted jewel, the creator, so to speak. You know?
Are those zodiac are the apostles in the Bible too, right? All the names in the Bible, Abraham, whatever.
Yeah, you can certainly talk about it like that. Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
Yes.
It's the aspects of your psyche, because the creator has generated your psyche. So your psyche contains all the aspects of the creator already. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the whole zodiac applies to your psyche. It's just that the sun rises in that sign, therefore they call you that. I'm a Virgo, but I'm this rising, and in my fourth house I've got this and what have you. There's all sorts going on there. What was going to say? I was going to say something. What were you just talking about there, Jack? Sorry.
Oh no, I wasn't saying anything. I was just listening to you.
You're talking about how you could apply the light to every zodiac.
Yeah, that's right. You can apply it to every zodiac sign. You were going on about Pisces, about the fish.
Oh
yeah. Right. Yeah. That was how I would logically interpret the logos, with the symbol of the two fish tied by their tails, essentially.
Sorry, go on.
I was going to say that's the natural logical conclusion that I come to looking at that symbol.
Right. If you look at the proliferation of the associations with fish, and the way they specify, when you get a scene like in a cylinder seal or a depiction, that there's a particular point of view being presented. That there's a particular overview, as if you can encapsulate it with one simple statement. It's not like a conglomeration of different ideas sort of glued together in a collage. It's a whole sort of concept. It's a unified concept always. And because of that, the main issue seems to be, when I look back and I look at all these associations with fish, the main issue seems to associate you in the underworld in that timeless condition, as if you are a fish in a grand ocean. And it's that simple association, because we all know that fish live in the sea. And of course, that's the grand ocean. And you're kind of like a fish, because you don't actually know what's going on when you're in that ocean looking at the cloud. You have no clue what the heck is going on. We're actually quite lucky that I've seen it. I can warn you, sort of thing, so that when you see it, you'll know what it is, because I didn't know what it was. And that's the normal way. In fact, that it's so prolific to surprise everyone who sees it, such that the first thing you ask when you see it, because you have no reference to associate when you see it. So the first thing you ask automatically is, what is it? And what is it in Hebrew, I think it's Hebrew, is the word manna, which is, the idea of manna from heaven.
Right.
Yes, what they sustained on in the desert, right?
Right. So when they say, go on.
Go on. No, go on.
No, carry on.
See, I always, whenever you read about the wilderness or the desert, or the kind of places that are literally interpreted as the middle of nowhere in the Bible, I always read that as the abyss. Like, Jesus went up into the wilderness. Okay, we're being told about the initiation of the tribulation again. Or, do you see what I mean, Phil? Yeah.
That's right.
And then this is the thing. I mean, I think I mentioned this with you, Steve, but I literally watched all your videos on the Bible. Well, all of your videos, Phil. I literally watched each of them maybe 15 to 20 plus times before I really logically understood everything you were saying. And then it came to a point where when I read the Emerald Tablets, it didn't matter if I was reading the Emerald Tablets or the Bible or Pistis Sophia or the Nag Hammadi. It was all the same thing being spoken about over.
Yeah.
And that's when I read, and that's when that's what gave rise to the veritability of your, well, should I say testament, like St. John, you know.
Yeah.
But,
Right.
Yeah.
so yeah.
Yeah, I totally get that. I mean, that I was surprised as well. You know, I didn't expect to see any references to it. After I saw it, I was amazed to see a simple reference to it in a Hindu book the following day. And that shocked me a bit, but I didn't see anything else anywhere, you know. And so I started looking in the Bible, and I started realizing that they were using different metaphors and associations to talk about it. It became very, very self-evident. And then I went on and read all these other texts, agnostic things, and it's like, oh my God, they're talking about the same thing. This used to be really important to these people.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, even when, because one book that really I thought was just kind of like a nothing book in the Bible was the Book of Ruth. Well, it's not really much of a story. It's just, you know, she goes from Magog to this other land and falls in love with Boaz, and that's really it. Like there's not really much. I mean, you could say from a psychological way, it's just basically trying to show women that you want to like work hard and be a good person, basically. But the bit where she kneels down in front of Boaz and she's holding hay, I'm like, hold on. So Ruth is the abyss here. The hay that she's holding is the Logos, and she's kneeling down in front of Boaz because Boaz is the divine truth, which is God. So I'm like, but how would you get that if you haven't been taught it or you haven't seen it? Like you're never gonna get that. It's like an impossible Rubik's Cube or puzzle or something. There's just no way you could logically come to that conclusion.
Yeah, that's right. It emphasizes the issue of when you don't know something, anything could be true. You know,
like,
and if
COVID-19.
Hey, say again.
Like COVID-19.
Yeah, when you don't know what something really is, anything can be true. I experienced this recently, horribly. You know, when I had this encounter with my my twin flame, I thought I was being attacked by a witch. I did. I thought that was a witch attacking me because they didn't come and apologize or say anything. So I'd forgotten. I'd forgotten about that sort of mentality when you really don't know something, because I haven't been in the situation where I didn't know something that I applied my mind to for 5 years. So it's the first time, and it took me by surprise. It helps you define how much you can get out of illumination as well. Right. You know, you can't read somebody's mind. You can read their face, but I can't read their mind telepathically, automatically. They have to sort of give up themselves to me to do, you know, to have that link and what have you.
Right.
But yeah, the confusion you can have when if just look around at people trying to interpret the material from Babylon, you know, and the Middle East and the ancient past and how they moved stones. I put a description up recently of a recording in, oh God, I think it's a temple in India somewhere where they've actually recorded an object that was used to move large blocks of stone, and it had a diamond in it. It's actually described in scripture, in the Vedas or something. I think it's in the Vedas or some recordings of the time when the temple was built, that it was that the stones are moved by this object, by a person wielding this object. And it looks like Zeus's thunderbolt implement. You know, the thing the electric universe people highlight?
Yeah.
Is it the Denninger?
Hang on, I'll show you. I've got it here. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it?
Did this thing work through resonance or
Yeah, here it is.
vibration?
Here it is. There.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
This thing.
Yeah. I've seen that before.
See, look, there's it's being wielded here.
Oh, wow.
It can be used as a weapon. It creates an incredible voltage. They reckon it accumulated an incredible voltage or an amount of joules. It was talking about how many joules it could produce of energy. So you can use it as a energy producer, as it were. And there's a diamond in the middle of it. I don't know how that works exactly.
So it's a highly efficient transducer, essentially. Like,
it seems that way. It actually reminds me of what somebody saw Ed Leedskalnin holding in his hands while he was moving blocks at his home.
I was going to bring that up. Yeah.
Yeah, he had they said he had ice cream cones in his hands. They're cones. That means that there's a wave coming out of the cone that's expanding.
Wonder if it works through the moon or something, because he only worked at night.
Yeah, was that to keep it quiet though, so nobody?
Yeah, that's why I wanted
You know
to
what I mean?
said that. Yeah.
I don't know, but anyway, I think we've got off. I keep going off track because there's so many interesting things tacked onto all this stuff, you know.
I like that because you know how my brain works too. That's all.
Yeah.
What we were talking about the logos, and just real quick, I got a couple questions so I don't pass them up. Menza asks about could you talk about the thousands of soul family entities that are here to help the earth at this time? You have mentioned something about that in the past.
Mm-hmm.
He's inquiring now about that.
Right. Well, so all I know is what I got from the hologram that came out of me, and I'll just be blunt about it. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of angels or extraterrestrials incarnated on this planet at the moment, at all sorts of ages. There are lots of them recently incarnated. I saw all of them at once, you know, in this hologram, all of them, and the crowd went off into the distance as far as the eye could see. So there's an awful lot of people here crowding into the planet from all over the cosmos, all over this galaxy in particular, and from higher dimensions as well, as if there's a great conjunction point occurring, as if there's some great shift occurring on the planet anyway, probably through natural events and maybe even forced events like this COVID lockdown thing is actually creating a different kind of psychological atmosphere for people, yeah, to deal with. Right. And when you have this great quietness, people have a chance to relax more. Yeah, as long as they're not, you know, irritating each other, but a lot of people have a better chance to relax. And I was wondering a few years ago whether any event could be global that would stop people in their tracks.
That's so beautiful, because I had that same thought. I had that very same, I was thinking that very same thing you just said right there, man.
Right. And even though it's an imposed thing from maybe some cabal or some idiot, you know, lost a virus from a lab, or they let it out on purpose, whatever the reason is, you can always use things for your favor, in your favor and for your benefit, no matter what they are. There's always a silver lining to every cloud, you know. It's just your attitude that makes you want to look for it or not.
Explain a little bit of that. You know, how does one overcome that nonsense of like the David Icke in the stream, and you know, that sort of thing? How they get you off on looking under rocks and looking around corners and, you know, dark alleys and whatnot. How do you battle that in your psyche to stay on track? And should we pay attention to that at all?
You can pay attention and have a look at anything you like. It's up to you. You can, you know, examine anything, obviously. The only question is the validity of information, where it comes from, and how important it is. Sometimes how important something is is relative. It depends on you. If you're 97 years old and about to die, you know, next month from whatever disease, and you know you're dying, you're not exactly going to be worried about the problems in the world anymore, are you? So they're not going to be on your mind. But if you're a young teenager just coming out into the world, you've just got a degree from university, and now all of a sudden the world's gone into lockdown and meltdown, and there's no, you know, there's no economy left and all this sort of thing, you're going to be seriously worried because it's going to affect your life. So I'm just highlighting the fact that these things affect people naturally differently anyway, but there is a spiritual position that would tell you that if you are centered in yourself and you find God within yourself, then anything in the world is never going to faze you. It'll always be in its rightful place in your psyche and your awareness of what there is. In other words, COVID-19 will not overtake my psyche. You know, I won't be in a panic over it. I barely even think about it. You know, that's not what I think about. I think about advancing my understanding and ability to express things. For instance, what if somebody asked me what happens when you die? I was actually thinking about that today, thinking, oh, well, what should I say if someone says that? You know, now I've seen what yogis have to say about it. And it makes you wonder, because there's a lot of information in the world that I have assimilated that is very challenging even to a yogi. For example, no yogi will ever be able to tell you that the earth has been flooded with angels. See? There's a perfect example, a real simple example that I know about that they don't know about. So they talk in terms of not realizing that there's this input. But I realize there is the input, therefore I can talk in those terms and take it on board. Do you see what I mean?
So you're saying there's a flood of angels that is an influx as of late, is what you're saying? I mean,
yeah, over the last few decades, if I'm one of them, I was born in 1970. See? Okay. And Dolores Cannon, I think, was talking about different waves.
You took her right out of my mouth, man. That's exactly what I was going to bring up, was her.
Right, because she talks about that, and I recognize what she talks about. So that is actually true. I didn't know that until, you know, I saw the hologram and it was confirmed. So that is actually true, and that's going to make a difference. There's all sorts of things to talk about there. My God, different ways of looking at it. You know, mentally as well as physical presence. There's mental presence as well, and the influence that we have on people, which is a very positive influence rather than a negative one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And of course, you drop a pebble in a pond, the ripples go out everywhere and encompass the entire pond. So it only takes for decent people to turn up to have a good influence on others and make them remember that there are other things in life that they can look at that aren't so miserable.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
If you're dealing with a question of whether people are happy, do you see what I mean?
Right. I know exactly what you mean. I know what you mean. I'm just trying to, I can't ever get the exact articulation out of what my thought is on the subject, because I end up getting sidetracked with whatever issue they're bringing up, you know, and it's like, you know, you try to head it off with I try to just say, hey, warriors are going to get you in the end. You know, You go down that rabbit hole, you go down that fork in the road, and so it's true. You're there. Okay. Now what? Right.
Yeah, what do you get? Yeah, what do you actually have in your hand now?
Yes, that's exactly. Yeah. So yeah, that's perfect. That's how.
I always used to ask the question, right, hang on a sec. Whenever I was overwhelmed by something, I'd ask the question, what does this amount to? What does it really amount to? You know, I went to a born-again Christian church in 1990. To sort of try and investigate them and suss them out, because I was amazed by their personas, their personalities, and their vivacious appreciation of the Bible that I just didn't see in normal Catholics. So I thought, what drugs are these people taking? You know, let me take some and see what's really going on. So I forgot my original point, actually.
You were making a point. I'm sorry.
No, I forgot it.
See, now this is how our talks always end up going. I mean, going squarely on us, because we end up going way down a road that and it's kind of akin to what we were just talking about, how we get sidetracked, and you know, where does it get you? But yeah, we were talking about, what were we talking about?
You're talking
making
about
a point
death
about,
and the angels incarnated on earth.
yeah.
And what does this amount to is the question that you always ask.
Right. Yes. Yeah. So I throughout my life, I've always asked the question, what does this or that amount to? The thing with the angels is it's going to be an automatic influence. I've noticed when certain people walk into a room, they can influence the mood, the sentiment, the issues of the energy in the room.
Yeah,
they can transform the energy,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Particularly, extra.
So really that's what an influx of positive energy in the midst. Yeah. I don't know whether you've noticed that there are certain people, I suppose, in the media that are very different to your regular sort of person. The media tends to highlight people that sort of stand out as maybe TV presenters or what have you, and some of those people are incarnated angels. I recognize it. The thing about an angel, I will recognize it. There's just something about them. Even if they don't admit it, it's always quite obvious to my appreciation anyway.
So I wanted to ask you on all this point. Oh God, I forgot what my question was now because I was too busy listening to everything you were saying.
Is that a common trait in people that think a lot? Is that we think too much and we get all convoluted in our heads? And I mean, it seems that's how you are, and Jack. But I mean, is that common? But I mean, what I wanted to ask you was, okay, so there are angels here. Now you're talking physically incarnated angels. When they are physically incarnated here, do they know they are angels to begin with?
No. I didn't know class. I didn't know class 44. I had a suspicion when I was 24 for the first time, because when you're young, you kind of, if anyone suggests that there's indigo children and rainbow children being born, all this sort of thing, and if you're a 13-year-old, let's say, and you think, well, am I an indigo child? You might want to entertain it because it's interesting and new, a new idea maybe, or it's a novelty, right? Mm-hmm. But once the novelty is worn off in a couple of years or 5 years down the line, and you're 5 years older, how do you feel about it then? Because it was something for me that grew in intensity, let's say, and I finally had a dream about it when I was 24 that made me highly suspicious of my origins. Basically a UFO landed at the back of my house, and the man driving it got out and came in and greeted me and turned out to be my reflection in the mirror. So that the dream was basically telling me that I am a person visiting this planet from a different realm, let's say.
So we're just sojourners, essentially.
Say again?
We're just sojourning here, essentially.
Yeah, that's right.
I remember what I was going to ask you now, actually, Phil. The first live chat me and Steve did, I decided to get a book that had a bunch of John Dee's journals and quotes from his journals when he did his angelic evocations. And what I noticed when I started reading it is that everything that the angels talk about is basically the same thing you talk about, except it's in very ostentatious, symbolic, mysterious, what's the word? Analogies, basically. Yeah. They don't say it because it's not in terms of the way we think in our scientific age, where we want to logically quantify and compartmentalize everything. But when I read that's when I realized that John Dee and the whole Enochian system of magic was absolutely not bullshit, and it was a very, very real thing. And what was weird is that as the angels wanted to give John Dee this new kind of alchemical Christianity based on their interactions, and a book of tablets they were going to give him called the Logar. My point is, as they were instructing John Dee, they were instructing him by telling him about the nature of reality and instructing him simultaneously. It's really quite amazing. If you should read that book, Phil. It's called there's a True and Faithful Relation, and I think Joseph Peterson, the journals of John Dee. You'd really enjoy reading that, I think, because it's just basically all about the logos and the nature of reality. That's all they seem to care for.
Yeah. I should read that. I've actually got John Dee's diary, which I've read, which is a day-to-day account of what he did, because I wanted to know what kind of man he was in the day-to-day. Who was the ordinary day-to-day John Dee?
Right.
And
yeah.
If John Dee is okay with the Enochian system, in my opinion, because he was so learned, then it's probably true what he's saying because of who he is, and it was the last thing he did in life. So I know Edward Kelly has a bad press and a bad write-up, and you can easily dismiss someone as a fraud because they're dealing with things that are very difficult to prove in a way.
Yeah.
And just because of that the rational scientific edifice will come at you and dismiss you simply because you can't prove it. And yet the intelligence behind it to me is that John Dee was a learned man. If he says that's okay, then I'm okay with that.
Yeah. But I think that I watched the Terence. There's a really good Terence McKenna documentary on YouTube about Dee, and I think the mistake that they made is that they wanted to usher in this new age of alchemical Christianity based on the truth, essentially. But what I've noticed, Phil, is that any mystical system of initiation, group management with respect to the size of the group becomes an enormous problem for that system until it essentially becomes an egregore, like Christianity or Islam has become. And the initial mysteries and purpose of that system of enlightenment or initiation, it just gets totally distorted and lost. But this egregore is left over that feeds off its own momentum and persists. And that gives rise to all the sects of Christianity that we have today.
Yeah.
And I think that was the mistake that Dee made. He tried to build an institution.
It's the biggest problem, isn't it? Because the immediate effect of illumination is that you want to go out and tell everybody because you've now understood the thing that they don't understand, but they are congregating around. And there are huge, vast numbers of people congregating around the Bible, for example, or the New Age version of Ascension, which is being taught that it comes from outside of you and it can't. The main thing I wanted to say, as you were talking there, Jack, was that any system of learning is really about preparing you for the level of contact with the divine in yourself, because that level is so intelligent that if you don't have any preparation beforehand, it can blow your mind literally.
Right.
And it can literally send you into a I've heard some people going too far too soon and coming out of it effectively burnt, because your brain, imagine having a bolt of lightning through your brain. It's almost like that illumination, you know. I couldn't even talk when I came out of it. It was such a massive change in the brain. And that level of understanding, I only got it in a very short amount of time. I was able to consciously grab the information from this vast cavern that was now my brain, with all the information of the creator in it already. I grabbed that, and of course that became the basis of what I talk about. And it seems to other people that it's simply a question of following some set of ideas that apparently will take you to the top of a mountain, but you're actually building the mountain yourself. Therefore, it's not simply hoarding information, it's actually sifting through information to understand what the information is giving you or telling you. And this is what you accumulate and understand, and eventually you match the level of your own highest self in your understanding, and your unification with your highest self is then going to be inevitable. However, there's still a personal aspect to it, because your highest self is still a person. And I also wanted to comment on the idea of other angels when they're communicating to somebody like John Dee, or if they're walking around and talking to you. You don't forget, you are going to become an angel yourself, and it doesn't automatically make you perfect. So angels, it's not that they make mistakes, it's that they think differently, but they're still people, and they still have a sense of humor as well. They still have their own sense of humor, their own experiences to draw from, etc., etc. So a communication from an apparent angel will always be thought of by people as a most perfect communication, that there's nothing ever wrong with it, or there's no personal paint in it. Do you see what I mean? So
yeah,
if you
on that note, it seems like they always communicate in terms of archetypes, and it's not very specific. It's very broad and pure, which is maybe why people determine their communication with angels is perfect, like you said.
that may be. I mean, the funny thing at the end of what I would call my own great work was I ended up looking into Walter Russell, and his basic premise not only was to define the simple nature of how things are go in and out in the cosmos, but his main issue was duality. And I found that very interesting, that after all that physics and maths that I'd done at university, you know, and all the psychology studies, etc., it all came down to duality, which is an archetype. I found that bizarre, and the very simple, very overarching view that the duality archetypes have encompass basically everything into very simple concepts.
Yeah, that's
That's very simple distinction.
That has been from practicing what's called the middle pillar ritual. That's something that I've basically distilled everything down to. Is essentially it's just duality. And Steve, if you remember last week, I said I have a problem with the term evil because it's inescapable to. It's inescapable, essentially, duality, until you have ascension and union with God. So, and another point I wanted to make, Phil, and I don't know if anyone in the chat can relate to this, but I do think with the with the knowledge you disseminate, there's a clear distinction. I've had to be very careful and keep checks on myself with respect to my own ego, because it's like, oh, look at me, aren't I so great? I understand the mysteries of the cosmos, and I've had to be very careful with that and not get too carried away. And my wife's taken me down a few pegs, a few times.
Dude,
necessarily.
Don't worry about it. I mean, to be honest, you know, how old are you now, out of interest?
I'm 32.
Right, and how old are you how old were you when you first rode a bike?
4 or 5.
So now, when you think about riding a bike, do you have to go around boasting about it? You don't. And I'm just making a point. See, when you get used to something, that you don't even think about it anymore. It's just there. It's just automatically there for you. You know, you know it.
It wasn't like I'd be boasting about it to people. I just getting these religious, you know, there was this one guy I used to work with who was like a Christian guy, just totally a literalist when it came to the Bible. He'd always say, well, Jack, it's written. And that was his argument. He'd be like, it's written. So There's no more else to say. And I got in a heated debate with him loads of times. He ended up telling me I was the devil, and I was like, technically, that's actually true. And so, you didn't want to hear it. That's my point. It's not really outwardly with other people. It's more within myself. I actually had to text Steve about this, where I ended up on some guy's YouTube channel, and he was interpreting the Bible. So I was like, "Oh, hello, what's going on here? Let's check it out."
Yeah.
Turned out he was one of the Black Hebrew Israelites. Are you familiar with them, Phil?
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
Right. Okay. And I started like interacting in the chat, and I got fucking attacked so badly by all of them. And you're fucking Esau. You're going to be in captivity when this is all over. And I had to seek Steve's counsel for psychological help after. I was like, what just happened?
Wow, you're in trouble if you're seeking me as a counselor.
Don't worry about it. You know, it's okay as well. It's okay to be proud of yourself as well, to pat yourself on the back. You know, there's no problem with that. You know what I mean? To recognize your own achievements is okay. It's realistic. You know?
Yeah.
But I know exactly what Jack's talking about there, where you'll come across information that so many times I've ran across this in the Nibiru community, because I used to film the sky, and I was, that was my initiation 6 years ago, was the word Nibiru, and it answered all these questions from the Bible, like the Noah's flood and all that, in the physical sense, it answered that in my head, because I was in the mentality of the car, stars, and bars still. But yeah, and now you see people making those comments, and it's like, wow, that's what it was meant by, there's a certain path, and that path is got to be walked by everybody, and that's the path of experience, and some are ahead of the curve and some are behind the curve, but in all, we're all going to get there, right, Phil?
Yeah, absolutely. It's inevitable in the end. I mean, I saw a statement. I keep looking at somebody called Swami Vivekananda, because he makes he makes powerful statements, but they have to be taken in context, and they have to be understood for what. A lot of these gurus grow up in India, and the things they say, the advice they might give you for your life, is only applicable in India, I'm afraid. It doesn't always apply. I grew up in London with Irish Catholics, their kind of material is very, very different. And in that environment, when a Swami says, like Vivekananda I saw this week, was comparing illumination to a man whose hair was on fire. In other words, he was saying, don't seek illumination unless your hair is on fire, such that you need a river to put it out in. In other words, illumination is so powerful, you really don't want it until you're ready for it. That you can understand that fine, but I don't know whether it's because I'm supposed to be an incarnated angel that it was so normal for me to, it's just normal. It's just every day. Do you know what I mean? Now, when I think of ascension, I think, well, yeah, that happened, but it's perfectly normal for a human being to go through that. The fact that everybody else hasn't had it makes me want to help them, but makes me realize also that there's not a lot of recognition of what it is and how it works and why it works, and the true nature of it, and the personal nature of your attitude as well, because your true highest self is a person that is looking at your attitude in a moment in time, seeing when your attitude is. But then, the last time we spoke, Steve, I brought up the idea that some people are born as mongoloids and have mental issues and physical issues with their brain that's not their fault. And those people with Tourette's syndrome, for instance, can you blame them for swearing at people in the local supermarket? That's not correct behavior. A Swami would say, well, that's not correct behavior. You're not allowed in my ashram. Do you know how disrespectful does it get? Where's the compassion? Where do you draw the line for compassion? Because some people in the know would tell you not to bother casting pearls before swine. Well, someone said that to me on YouTube, and I disagree with the context of telling me that on YouTube, because some people watching YouTube are not swine, and they are going to appreciate it. Even if one person appreciates it, it's worth me putting it out. Do you know? Do you see what I'm saying? So I don't always agree with these. I don't always agree with these apparent wise statements, especially. I wouldn't tell anyone to worry about illumination because there's nothing about it to worry. It's an amazing thing. Do you see? So I wouldn't try and dissuade anyone from it.
Well, on the point of that, Phil, and Steve, you might agree with me on this. It's like, in this lifetime, if I have amassed this intellectual knowledge of mysticism, and, you know, I kick the bucket whatever way, and it's like, you know, there's no illumination, then it's like, is that going to be lost, all that knowledge that I've acquired? And do I have to start again? Or will I find another teacher who knows what he's talking about in a future incarnation? Or have I even illuminated before? You know, I have all these questions. And if so, what does that mean, etc.?
Yeah, usually you find things when you're ready to hear them, kind of within a certain frame of time, I would say, because I've had to wait quite a while to hear something that I was ready to hear. You know, simply for the physical nature of the world and the lack of information or availability of information before the internet. Yeah, that kind of thing. But you were saying, what happens if you don't find illumination? Well, that's a really interesting question, because it begs the question of what is life in terms of energy? What are we doing with this energy? Because your body is the tool that you have to achieve this illumination and the liberation into the unification, you know, from this duality system to rise above it. So your body is an accumulation of energy. So it's about accumulating energy and then focusing the energy into a point, and then it becomes singular. Right. Yeah. You're basically using your body's energy to focus to a point to create the abyss, basically, in a way. And you match God as you get there. So you invite it into union with God, and that God has already done it. So you've now got the answer that allows the abyss to be created.
So it seems from that comment that you've just made. So is it like, basically, take the piano, for example. The more I practice the piano, the better I'll become, or guitar, trumpet, whatever. Okay. So when it comes to illumination, the more time I spend meditating, and I mean, meditating as Peter Carroll delineates it in Liber Null, you've read that, right?
Yeah.
Then, so I'm trying to compare it with improving on a musical instrument, meditation, with the result of with the final result. Do you understand what I'm saying? So is it like, here, another example? So a pilot that is competent, they measure their flight hour time, basically. You know, it's all logged. Say this pilot's got 45,000 hours, so he's a good pilot. Is it like that with meditation? Like, the more you meditate and the better quality that your meditation is, and the more accustomed you get at coming on rapport with the stillness, is that going to massively advance your quest, basically?
Yes, it is, naturally, yeah, because you're focusing. I was going to say something about what you've just been talking about there. There's a couple of things. When I was in Cambodia, somebody approached me. He was a guy working in the hotel, and he seemed to think that I'd know the answer to this for some reason. I don't know why, but he came up to me and he said, "Look, Phil, I've got this quote from Gandhi." And Gandhi said, live as though you're going to die tomorrow, learn as though you're going to live forever. And I immediately understood what he was saying, because what he's saying is you continue. And for instance, when I was in the underworld, it was me. I had all my memory. It was me as I am now. There's no difference. So when you die, there's no difference. It's still you. You're going to retain your memory.
But just with no body.
Right. But we see, when you come back, you go through a veil of forgetfulness. You have to forget everything to start from scratch, because the whole point of this is to build from nothing. It's almost like life is the American dream. It's the American dream.
Dude, I was gonna. How do you explain that part of it too? How we can all be on the same level, the same learning curve, or like me and you have communicated many times where you were like, "Funny you bring that up," but how can everything be in synchronicity like that? I mean, is that the case all around, or and what makes it?
You do lock in. I mean, while I'm talking, I've got images in my mind that I'm thinking of, and as I'm talking through them, another image will come up that links to it that has a metaphorical association. Like the American dream is going from rags to riches, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, we had a good laugh. We had a good laugh about Manly P. Hall and his secret history of America, didn't we, Steve?
Oh yeah.
About Earth is so important because of America. Like,
that depends on your point of view.
He was right.
Yeah, so I was going on that point you said. So say I'm going to conduct an experiment, a chemistry experiment. I need to decontaminate all my lab equipment before I start this new experiment, because I need to control these initial conditions so the experiment has validity, right? So is it like that with the veil of forgetfulness? You need to revamp these initial conditions of life in order to, I don't know, like, you understand what I'm asking you?
Yeah. Don't forget, some people remember in their early youth, they remember bits and pieces from their previous life for a start. So sometimes you get a bit of a head start. It depends on you. It depends on how conscious you are. It depends on how expanded your consciousness was in your last life as well. Yeah. So some children are apparently geniuses on the piano when they're only 5 years old. All of a sudden.
Mozart is the best example.
Yeah. Where'd that come from? That's not born into you as a child. That's from a previous existence.
On that point, I was practicing the piano the other day because I play, and because like I compare myself to like these jazz greats, and I had the thought come to my mind that to master the piano would take multiple lifetimes. It's not possible to do it in one. Unless I got some strict Chinese parents that make me practice 6 hours a day. Sorry to be like racist. Steve, what do you think of that?
What did you just say? I'm sorry about.
Sorry.
What were you just saying? I was reading something that I should have been paying attention. I apologize.
That's right.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I was just saying to Phil that maybe to like master a certain trade. I use the musical instrument as an example. It may take multiple lifetimes to do that.
Oh yeah.
And to expand on that point, have you read Edgar Cayce and his model of reincarnation and the solar system, Phil?
Maybe in the past. I can't recall it offhand, but I've read a lot of Cayce before.
So essentially, he talks about how every planet in the solar system is a plane of the afterlife and represents a different dimension. So if you activate your heart chakra in your lifetime, and that's the highest that you get, or something to do with the heart, that's the highest, like gland. No, he relates it in terms of the biological glands. If that's like the highest one, you'll go to Venus after you die, but it's not you're going to be in Venus in the third dimension on the surface as we observe from Earth. It's like another realm. So he delineates all the different planets and what they're to do with. So if you died angry, you're going to go to Mars. If you were a mystic, you end up on Neptune. If you're a criminal and a scumbag, you have to go to Saturn. And he had all these different examples. But he said that Earth, this is the point I wanted to make, is Earth is basically like an experimental ground. And because everyone has their own individual free will, it makes things a bit wacky, if you see what I mean. Like, I forgot what question I was going to ask. So yeah, that was what I was going to ask. Like, so could I decide to reincarnate on the Earth plane multiple times? Like, would I have that choice?
Right. Put it this way, because you're even though there's no final destination, because your existence is eternal in a way, the goal, as it were, is to understand. So in the goal of understanding, there is only one goal as such, and because it's the same goal for every single soul, ultimately your the decisions behind what life you should be taking will be geared towards getting you closer to that goal. So to some extent, you may have some choice in the life. You might choose between certain lives, but to another extent, there's an overmind, as it were, your higher mind that knows what is best for you and will strongly suggest you in a certain direction. But it's the same in life. There's a path designated for you that's ideal, but you don't have to take it, and you can go back on it whenever you want.
Mm. Yeah, there's a lot of stories of magicians doing the Abramelin ritual and evoking their holy guardian angel, and the angel will change into the demon Choronzon, basically, which is when the ritual goes wrong, essentially. And it's viewed in one of two ways, but essentially something really bad would happen to certain magicians after they did that ritual. And maybe I theorize it's because it's something that they need to experience to help their overall understanding of existence and reality, etc.
Any experience that a person has, the outcome of that experience will be determined by their skill, let's say. So sometimes it's not a question that the universe has decided to throw this experience in front of you at the moment. It's just there's random experiences, but we deal with them depending on our own skill set and our internal logic and our whole makeup behind the choices we make. The more skillful you are, the better you'll be able to handle any situation. But of course, when you're talking about demons or dealing with demons, you need a very high appreciation of reality to deal with that.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The point I'm making is that whatever experience you have, some experiences I've failed at, some experiences I've been successful at. The fact that I've failed at them told me that they weren't necessarily there for the reason of getting me to learn about that as such. It was simply that I wasn't ready for that at that time. And you can experience the death of somebody when you're a toddler or a child, as well as when you're an old person. Dying doesn't give a damn how old you are. It doesn't care how you appreciate it. It's going to happen anyway. Mm-hmm. So how you handle it depends on your experience, I feel, and your skill.
Mm. Okay.
Right.
That's how I see experiences, because I hear a lot of people online saying, well, you were destined to have that experience. Well, not necessarily. If I failed at it, why would I be destined to have it then? Surely I should have something come along when I can handle it when I'm ready. If it's all about giving you experiences to help you, to encourage you, because that's what the point of it is, in a way, to help you, to encourage you to overcome obstacles and realize that you can do that, and you have all the answers within.
Yeah.
Well, we as humans innately, we know that we are creatures of habit, and we continually, like some people have relationship issues, pick the wrong boyfriend, the wrong girlfriend. Some people have eating habits, and they just keep doing the circle, and I think the main things in each one of us that is our hindrance is usually going to be what delivers us to the I don't know, gives us the gold, I guess, the golden key.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree with that, Steve, because what I've found from magical endeavors is that my greatest asset is my mind, and my greatest enemy is simultaneously my mind at the same time.
Yeah.
Or that lowest part of that lower self aspect of my mind going, no, I don't want to ascend. I don't want to become... I don't want to ameliorate life. It's too difficult. I just want to, like a kid that doesn't want to do their homework and goes, oh, it's too difficult to add 5 + 7. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Can I just say, one of the biggest issues I've encountered in the last 5 years is the way people speak when they apparently are at a spiritual height. I've noticed a lot of them, when they emphasize God, they talk about God in almost religious terms. And I can just imagine anyone who hasn't experienced that, listening to that kind of rhetoric and those kind of words, you know, like a Swami I saw this week again was talking about how devotion to God. And I thought, well, I've never felt that. I've never had that in my life. And I made it there, you know. It wasn't about devotion to God for me. It was about devotion to understanding.
Right.
And just being honest with myself. If somebody talked about God like that, I think they were a bit weird and I wouldn't want anything to do with them, you know.
That's a major difference in semantics, that is.
Yeah.
Devote to understanding versus devote to an abstract idea of God.
Yeah, the point I was making there was that a lot of people might be put off about going for ascension or illumination simply because they don't have a thing about God, and they think, well, it's all about God and I'm not really interested in that, so I'm not going to bother with it. But yeah, it is all about that, but it's not at the same time, because it's all about you. And it's not a religious situation you end up in. I'm not religious. I don't go around wearing long white robes. This is a t-shirt. Do you know what I mean? It's not a robe. You know, I don't think I'm Jesus, etc., etc. I don't think.
Why is your hair so short?
Say again?
I said, where's your beard and why is your hair so short?
Oh, I've got more stubble. It's stubble. I've just shaved a bit short.
Where is it and why is your hair so short? I was making.
I see. In terms of Jesus. Right. Yeah. I got you. I'm with you. You're right. All right.
But yeah.
I wouldn't want to do that either. I wouldn't want to come across like that, because that's just creepy. You know, I saw.
It is creepy. It is creepy. My wife has had a friend who's gone through. She was on meth, and she's now got a megalomania complex that thinks she opened her third eye and she's the savior of the world. And it's really creepy. It's sad as well. It's really sad. Oh, just quickly on the topic of my wife. My wife thinks that you're bullshitting about you smoke loads of weed at university to deliberately make it hard. She thinks you smoke load of weed because you wanted to get high. I don't know. It's true. No, she didn't believe you, Phil. She was like, nah, he just wanted to get high and is leveraging Bruce Lee as an excuse to get high.
No, it changed. The reason I was, just to be honest, the reason I was smoking it changed in my first year, because I was 5 years older than everybody else in the year. It was very difficult to make friends. They're not very difficult to make friends with 18-year-olds for some reason. When you're 5 years older than them, there's a great distinction, and they can't relate to you anyway. So I used to spend my evenings focusing on my physics homework because it was quite difficult. And I thought, wouldn't it be fun if I got completely stoned and did it? And what would it be like then? So when I did it the first time in my first week, it was so much fun. I just carried on going. I just carried on doing it because it was more enjoyable.
Yeah, I don't fucking smoke weed anymore, man.
I do every once in a while. I ain't gonna lie.
Yeah.
I still try it.
No, David Icke plus lots of strong weed is not good. It really isn't. Right. Well, I mean, that's what we discussed, Steve, about the Icke interview last week. I was telling Steve that, Phil, that watching David Icke now, but being in a completely more advanced place psychologically from when I started watching Icke 10, 12 years ago, I felt like that I'd basically completed the Negredo stage of alchemy, because here I am with David Icke again. Yet I'm not reacting to him in the same way I did, which was to go crazy and smoke as much weed and do as much drugs as possible to negate for a sense of I don't know. It's hard to explain, but there was a sense of completion there.
Yeah.
Essentially, when Icke was having his 5G ramble.
Yeah.
So. Yeah.
The thing about David Icke is I don't know why he seemed to get the idea from a psychic, that the psychic told him that he was the son of God. See, which is a really bad idea, which is utter nonsense. And he had a samadhi experience in some place, I think it was South America. You know, he had a basic samadhi experience. And that's what he goes on about, feeling the oneness of connection. But it's a very generalized concept as he presents it. And he never got to a succinctness with the issue, because he didn't go on to illumination, because he can't be bothered with knowledge as such, because he was a sports person. You know, he wasn't an intellectual. Do you know what I mean? So illumination takes for a bit of intellectual development. You know, I didn't unify duality on 5 minutes of mathematical training. You know what I mean? That took years to be able to do that. Maybe I could have done it earlier, but it does take a bit of mental agility to do that, to have that thought experiment. You know?
What are your thoughts on why he would go down the like the excuse me, the path of, you know, everybody's a reptile and, you know, they're all against us, and you know, is he speaking the truth? What's your opinion on the whole situation there?
Well, once you have gone into public and stated and recorded that this is your point of view, it's going to be very hard for you to change that and bring that down, especially if it is part of the foundation of your premise and your thesis.
And success as well.
Yeah. People like it because it's interesting and it's different and it's weird and wacky, you know.
Yeah, well, it really got me, Phil, and I was like, oh shit, yeah, this is all true. Like, and then like about a week later, I've thought about it and I've gone, hold on a second, I've been played here like a fucking violin, and I've conceded that with the COVID thing, I don't know, and that's the way it is, and I'm content with that. You know, I saw a load of shit get debunked from certain conspiracy theories, and I kind of felt a bit stupid, if I'm honest. And then I was like, all right, I'm just going to let this go and let my ego take the dent that it probably needed and move forward, you know?
Yeah, it really, if you want to know what something is, just look at the results in the world around you, you know, or even the hidden results. Just look at what actually happens and you'll find out what's really going on. You know, so if everything does go back to normal, then it was just a virus. Maybe they let it out by accident. Maybe it was done on purpose. Who knows? But it's not really killing an awful lot. It's not like the plague, and it's certainly not like the Spanish flu. It's not. I know we got lockdown and that's helping, but it's not as big a problem as it used to be in the world, this sort of thing. So we should get over it.
Is it a problem? It could be a blessing, like we were talking about earlier. You know, it could be the moment where everybody has the chance or the time or the wherewithal to even go within themselves and think about bigger matters than getting their food or getting their, you know, their toilet paper.
Just today, I saw a Vivekananda concept where he was saying, somebody asked him, what is the duty of a human being? This is a question that is found in the Bible as well, and the answer is always the same. The answer in the Bible and Vivekananda is exactly the same, and it was to realize your God self. That's the only duty of a human being. You don't have to do anything else. You don't have to go to work. You don't have to do anything. So I was always wondering, how can a Swami just sit there and just meditate all day and do nothing and turn women away and turn relationships away and turn opportunities away? To be honest, at the end of the day, when you find God, I don't see that. I don't feel like sitting meditating all day because I'm in the presence of God permanently anyway. I don't need to. My whole life is a meditation now. Do you see what I mean? So you don't need to do those things. And I find a lot of the things they say a bit off-putting because you'll get the wrong impression from them. Yeah, or you get completely the wrong impression that when you make it, that's what you do. You become a guru and you build an ashram and you get everyone else to pay for your living. What? That's just what happens in India.
Everyone's got to make a buck, Phil. We've all got bills to pay, eh?
Yeah, right. I mean, I just go to work like everybody else. It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
You know, it's not a problem at all. So
what else were we going to talk? I had a question from from Jack's wife. She asks, Have you had any contact with any Freemasons? And if so, was it positive or negative? And could you elaborate on, that whole concept of the Freemasons?
Yeah, I worked for some Freemasons before. About 10 years ago, I was the PA to an operations manager who himself was a Freemason, who worked for a Freemason who was a multi-millionaire. So I would go around with the operations manager, and the Freemason who owned the company would buy warehouses on the outskirts of London that had been sold or up for sale. Companies had moved out. He'd buy them, and he'd get us, me and John, me and the operations manager, to go in and sort the place out. So that's what I used to do. I did that for 3 years with John. John was a Freemason, and he had Freemason pamphlets and things in the car when we used to go at these jobs. So I asked him about it. He told me about the Knights of St. John, but he told me about the Knights Templar as well, that they're still extant. The Knights Templar is basically the basis of Freemasonry. And his boss, well, our boss, I won't tell you his name, there's no need, but he was a multimillionaire, and he was a higher ranking Freemason, and he was a lovely guy. I really liked him. He was very easy to get on with. His life was very busy. He had no time for any deviousness in his own life. He had no time for that. He was a businessman and a very responsible, locally recognized person. So when people talk about Freemasons, you've got almost a double-edged sword there, because on the one hand, they're regular people who often become Freemasons to advance themselves in life, to get a backup, to have some stability and know that they got the brotherhood behind them, supporting them for the rest of their life. That can make somebody feel comforted, to have that backup. But on the other hand, their material is very hermetic, and it does develop them in a different sort of way towards a sort of godlike mentality. But then they can become quite intellectual and think, have a very high esteem of themselves. And they may even be intellectually astute and very compassionate, etc., etc. But they haven't got to illumination. And that puts me off in a way, because why do they never make it? What does that say about their attitudes? Because it's your personal attitude that has a lot to do with reaching illumination, because it's personally given. It's as if you've made friends with God, and God has accepted you as a friend. So now you're going to have union. But how come Freemasons don't make friends with God then? Is it because they think of the creator as God, and they have a misapprehension or misinterpretation somewhat of exactly what is what? Because you can't represent the persona of God with any symbol or anything. You simply have to read about it or hear about it. And I would say that is Krishna. So I'd say, well, go and read the Bhagavad Gita if you want to meet God or hear about God directly. Don't go to a Freemason's lodge and look at a pyramid and see the light at the top of the pyramid, because you're going to think they're going to tell you that is God when it's not.
Well, that's the Logos, isn't it?
Well, God doesn't have anything to do with the physical creation in itself anyway, does he?
That's right. God is spirit, which is not creation. Spirit is the opposite of creation. Therefore, God has nothing to do with creation as such. God is personal, only. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think it's just Freemasonry that has this issue. I know that the OTO has this problem where they're basically become liberal postmodernists that if you're not a liberal, they won't initiate you into their order. It's like, Aleister Crowley would be rolling over in his grave if he knew about that, so. And that's actually, I wanted to ask you about another question. What's your take on postmodernism coming out of the School of Frankfurt versus like good old morals of Christianity? Like, what do you make of all that? Because it's causing a lot of instability in society, in the cultural fabric of society.
When you say postmodernism, can you give me an example that exemplifies that?
I mean, the the idea that anyone can interpret anything in any way they want and it's equally valid from anyone else's interpretation, that idea, and that we can do away with morals as delineated by Christians and all the scriptures, and that's what I mean. Like, I can interpret anything in any way I want because that's basically, and if you say I can't, you're a racist, you know, that
Right.
kind of shit.
Yeah. Well, if you have a lack of defining authority behind something, if nobody recognizes what's in the Bible, for instance, but they claim to understand the words that are in it, where is the validity? Where is the authority that says this or that interpretation is valid? Here's the biggest problem with this subject. The only way to validate it is personally. So even if I talk until I'm blue in the face and explain everything in great detail about this, you won't know it for yourself until you have it for yourself. Ultimately, that's always going to be the case. So when you have these written down scriptures, the only people who will be able to interpret scriptures written down by people who are ascended are those who are ascended themselves.
Right, yeah.
Only they will recognize it. And I don't know yet if my interpretation of the Bible is acceptable to people because they don't recognize Ascension.
Well, it's not acceptable to a lot of Christians I've spoken to, that's for certain. Like, I get called the devil and Esau and evil. That's what I've noticed. Like, they're just totally not ready for it and they can't hack it because you're telling them that Jesus, it doesn't matter whether the man existed. That's not the point. And they're like, what do you mean? That is the point. He's the Son of God that died for our sins. And you're like, okay, well, what does that mean? And then the people after it, they don't know. And, you know, it's just, it gets like messy intellectually.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Yeah, it takes from more than 5 minutes of talking to someone like that to show them, like, for instance, the Gospel of John. If I had a chance to explain the Gospel of John to a room full of Christians, I think it might freak them out because the Gospel of John specifically identifies this light as not a person.
Yeah, well, this is the story in the Gospel as well, is that Jesus tells the multitude the truth from a mystical point of view. So what do? They crucify him, they kill him. And it's the same, that's like the moral of the story, if you can say that, is that if you've developed a wealth of mystical knowledge that you've been taught by, you know, ascended masters, if you then try and disseminate that to people who are religious, they'll just essentially kill you. Like they you know, that maybe not in modern society, but
yeah, in the Middle
past,
East, I think.
Oh yeah, in the Middle East they would do today. Yeah. Or like 300 years ago in the witch trials in America, they would have thrown you off a cliff. And I think that might be one of the morals of the story, not from an anagogical level of exegesis, is that there's sometimes you should just keep your mouth shut to certain people. You know, silence is golden, you know. So yeah.
It is better in those conditions to write a book and remain anonymous so that the material is disseminated, but nobody knows who wrote it.
Right, yeah.
Under the pen name Hermes or Thoth.
There you go.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Right.
Well, the other question I had, Phil, there was another question I had. Can you explain this is the only thing I don't understand in the Gnostic text, is the 4 and 20th mystery.
Yeah. Now I remember.
And you've even got the picture. You had the picture earlier, Steve. So this is how I've tried to interpret it before you answer, Phil. 4 is Dalet, which is the palm of the hand, and 20 is Kapf, which is a door. So a palm and a door. I've been trying to figure out the relationship between, like, you push a door with the palm of your hand. And that's all I've got with it, and I'm still blunderingly scratching my head with it. So, yeah, there it is. You got it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, Phil, by chance, was this the hologram that came out of your chest that is surrounding my head?
Well, it's kind of similar to that in a way. That there was no light. There was just people, and they were all standing at the same height. So I could just see over the tops of their heads, and they were in a circle around me, going back into the distance. So it was a circle around me. The nearest was about 4 or 5 feet away.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's quite similar. Yeah, just lots of heads, lots of people's heads bobbing about. Yeah.
But what is your take on the 420? It's not just a time to smoke pot, right?
Well, 4 and 20, is that an old way of saying 24?
That's what I always thought. That's what I think you gave me that explanation before.
Right. So you're talking about the 24 in the Book of Revelations.
No, I'm talking about Pistis Sophia.
Yeah, he's talking about Pistis
Sophia. The first chapter of Pistis Sophia. Where is it? Here it is.
But in the Emerald Tablets, he references that too, the 20 and 4, or the 4 and the 20.
Right.
I've never been able to figure it out, and I've looked online, and no one seems to have a appropriate answer.
Right.
And my Kabbalistic interpretation didn't make sense. Although, if you use the Tree of Life, I think 20 is Yod on the Tree of Life, which the 20th path is Yod, I think, which relates to God. Yod, and do you see what I mean? But yeah.
Well, immediately, you know, when you say palm and door, the door to heaven is really the creator.
Right.
That's the link between heaven and earth. And of course, he puts his right hand on you. His palm is facing you. You could interpret it like that, but I'd like to know what the context of the number in the sentence and the text.
Let me friggin' look. This is the GRS Me translation. Because I know in the very first chapter of the book, they start talking about it straight away. Jesus. I'm not going to be able to find it at a glance. But
let me look it up. Hang on. 2 seconds.
Oh, it's in the very first. It's right at the beginning, in the second paragraph, Phil.
Right.
So it says. Shall I? Let me read the second paragraph. It says, "What the first mystery surroundeth, and Jesus said to his disciples, I am come forth out of that first mystery, which is the last mystery. That is the 4 and 20th mystery."
Right.
Hey, is that the 42?
No. I've got a picture of what you're saying there. With the first mystery, you know the Ein Sof Or.
Yeah. So the first mystery is essentially, well, it would be God, wouldn't it? It would be the infinite void of personal spirit, right?
Yeah, the infinite nature of spirit, let's say.
So but see, there's always the double interpretations. You could also interpret the first mystery as the Logos, because it then also goes on to say, which is also the last mystery.
Ah, yeah. Okay?
So
that's right.
There's always the double these things mean multiple things at the same time, right? But
yeah.
I've just been stumped by this. This is the only thing that stumped me. I've not. Yeah. Shall I read it again?
So let me just throw something out because what you're saying there is very valid, because when people use the word Brahman, for instance, they often use the word Brahman to refer to the infinite nature of God. But I associate the persona of God with the infinite nature of God, and the persona of God is Krishna, and Krishna talks about Brahman. Therefore, Brahman has a distinction to Krishna. see, it's not just this. So Brahman to me is a reference to the thrice nature of God, which includes the Son of God. So it's the whole thing. So when someone says the infinite nature of Brahman, it's beyond this and that, I see, well, I get you're referring to the infinite nature of God there in the God thrice great concept. But really,
Right.
Brahman takes into account the Son of God as well, because Brahma is the Son of God.
Right. Yeah.
Likewise, when someone is using a reference, they might be including things that you might not think of, that you might not include, let's say. So in that particular quote there, you can interpret it specifically as the Son of God being the first and the last, as you just said. You can interpret it as the first mystery of God, because when we come into incarnation, we lose sight of that. And we only regain sight of that when we have the spiritual union. So you had it and then you regain it. So you can interpret it in those terms as well, as coming back into the mystery of God, back into divine awareness. Yeah. The 4 and 20, I'd have to look. I want to know what else it says in the text there to get a context of how they view things. Because I'm seeing that immediately as
chapter 1. It's at the very beginning of Pistis Sophia, right at the get-go.
Yeah, what does it say immediately after the bit you've read out?
Actually, I need to read the bit before that, because the bit before that includes it as well. In fact, it mentions it several times. So the very first, the first book of Pistis Sophia, chapter 1, the title of the header, Jesus hitherto instructeth his disciples only up to the regions of the first mystery. And it says, it came to pass when Jesus had risen from the dead, that he passed 11 years discoursing with his disciples and instructing them only up to the regions of the first commandment and up to the regions of the first mystery, that within the veil, within the first commandment, which is the 4 and 20th mystery, without and below, those 4 and 20 which are in the second space of the first mystery, which is before all mysteries, the Father in the form of a dove. Like that's so different. That's the hardest scripture for me to interpret. That paragraph, that's been the most difficult one by far.
Well, you might be looking for more in it than there is. In that case, you might.
Could it be the 4 cardinal directions, the 4 aspects of our psyche, the four elements of the earth? Could it be the 2 completed trees? I don't know.
No, well, I think you're only separating out the number 4 because of the way it's spoken in that particular form of English. That sounds like an old English. I would rather hear a modern translation or modern version of that, because we can get lost in old English as well and think they're saying something when they're not. The 4 and 20 immediately, it just instantly conjures for me the 24 in the Book of Revelations, which is a way of referring to the units, the pairs of cranial nerves you have that produce the Creator. And that you ascend, and that it's the intelligence of God, it's the divine intelligence that can be associated with the dove, in association with your brain coming into unison, so that the 24 are now one with the light. It's the scenario that's written of in the Book of Revelations, where your brain is turned into the brain of a god and you become perfected in certain terms. So to me, the 24 there is really a reference, as Edgar Casey talks about, to the pairs of cranial nerves. That there are 12, but they're in pairs, so there's 24.
I didn't know there were in
and that's where we get the sexagesimal system and all that from, right? I mean, the 24 hours a day, and day means God, sky, whatever.
Yeah, because you're the complete path of the sun, like in Revelations, it says the Son of God has a golden sash around his chest, which is a complete loop in gold, and that represents the path of the sun during the course of a whole day. A single day represents your whole life as well.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so
it's just scaled. It's just your life is a fractal scale up from a day. basically.
You can look at your day in terms of your life, or the year in terms of your life.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can do both. And of course, unifying those two, the day and the year, is what squares a circle in the sky with the sun, right?
Right.
Because the day has 3 stations, but the year has 4 seasons. So 3 becomes 4. The circle becomes squared.
Yeah, that's what that's what I noticed in John Dee's name, because it's John D is delta, which is 3, then John, which is the light. So it's 3 and the light. There's this 3 plus 1 equals 4.
I'm welling up with patting myself on the back for changing my name to that, and I didn't even know that. You know that something. That's what I mean with these numbers and me. They go through me and manifest themselves, and then I find out later.
Yeah.
That's weird. It's just weird. So now, like the 333 thing, Phil. That's what I wanted to get to was. So okay, we were here before, did this before, been here, done that. Did you have something in your life speaking out to you before you reached illumination that was pointing you in a direction, or would grab you or your attention, or like I've explained my 333 thing with you before, but
because the first thing I learned by studying Bruce Lee, you see, I realized that wisdom tells you if you want to achieve something, you simply focus on it, and you focus all your attention on it. If it takes a long time, it doesn't mean you have to concentrate on it all that time. It's simply that in the back of your mind, you're always aware that you're wanting to move in a certain direction to get somewhere. Right. And you simply make the decision that that's what you're going to do, and that's it. You've decided. Now that's what you're doing. You can't keep chopping and changing, because the universe has to respond to your choices, and it takes time to respond to you. Your actions will get a reaction from the cosmos, as it were. That takes a bit to explain. Right. But don't forget, God is looking personally. Your highest self is with you all the time, encouraging you to do this. Yeah, and you'll get things thrown at you that will encourage you to go in a certain direction. Some experiences will be good, some will be bad. That you think are bad experiences, they're not. They're simply there to teach you something. If you go through life with no focus and no particular direction, you just earn money and you have sex, you have kids, you blah blah blah, you don't give a damn about anything in particular, you'll get your destined events, but you won't encourage anything of a divine nature as such. We encourage the divine experiences that encourage us even further by pursuing it in the first place. So you can't run before you can walk. So you have to start somewhere.
That's beautiful, man. That's really. I mean, you're becoming a real, in the best sense of the word, teacher on. I mean, how you can. Because I remember when we first started talking, you were like, "Man, I just can't articulate what I'm trying to get through." I mean, you've come a long way in that aspect there, Phil.
Doing this helps. Forcing yourself to do something helps, because you find how to do it.
I find myself just stuck on, like, how do I get that thought out of my mind and present it to somebody so they can understand it? It's almost impossible. So I appreciate it, man. Totally appreciate it.
Cool. Yeah. Do you guys want to carry on, because it's 5 to 11 here?
I was just about ready to say, hey man, we're gonna wrap this up, because I gotta go cook some dinner.
Right.
My wife and kids are getting hungry, and we're trapped in the house together. I don't want them eating me.
I got a new stove being delivered.
Have you?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I got a
it's
new
all
stove
go.
being delivered. So
it's all go.
And I'd lied at work today. I pretended I had a sore throat.
It's eating you, isn't it? It's eating you.
Yeah.
You're allowed to.
Well, look, if I told him the truth, I would have said, hey, man, there's this really great mystic that's going to be on the internet at 1 o'clock today that I can do a live chat with. Can I have the afternoon off? I figured I'd just bullshit. But bad habit. I shouldn't do it.
Well, just
I was like, hold on, what takes more precedence, Steve?
hey, I agree. I totally agree. But
racking his brain for.
But what did you say to him? What excuse did you give? You said I have a sore throat.
I have a sore throat coming on.
And what did I say to you?
You said be careful because they'll say don't come to work for 2 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right.
Unless my manager subscribed to your channel. I mean, I don't know. It could be. He's not.
Really?
He's not. He watches CNN all the time, so he's clearly not. So.
Well, obviously, yeah.
See, that's what I mean. That's the ego check that I referred to earlier, Phil.
Yeah.
You can't look down. I got to catch myself out from looking down at people.
Don't worry too much about it, man. As long as don't forget, it's your actions that count more than what you think about. Yeah, don't worry about what you think about. You can think what you like. It's your actions. That's what determines what goes down. Your actions. So don't worry about it.
Well, it's funny you say that because we live in the mainstream media and all these people online before coronavirus. You know, people getting cancelled for not having this homogenous view, left-wing view. It's like humanity has gone into a place where people want to judge other people based on what they say rather the actions they take, which is totally backwards because no one doubts what you do, but people will question what you say, or it might be the other way around, that saying. But
well, in the online world, you can't tell what people do in their private life. You can only see what they present to you. That's it. It's all about presentation.
Yeah,
isn't it? It's a little bit void of the depth of real communication with another human being that's standing in front of you, let's say, or is in your area all the time, and your friend, and you know them. You know, it's different, isn't it?
Yeah, very different. Yeah, but
what can you do?
I do feel like a kind of sorrow for like the ignorance, but not like the ignorance that is justified as moral superiority. And it's like you know, it just brings me a sense of sorrow, like shutting other people's down opinion and cancelling them just because they got a different opinion to you. And I think this really does have its roots in postmodernism. I really do, but a bad aspect of it, unlike you know, Peter Carroll's maybe a good aspect of it, you know.
I was horrified by the results of ignorance as I saw it. It wasn't the ignorance that got me. It was the result. It's what it brings about. That's what horrified me. The fact that people suffer as a result of other people's behavior. And there's no spiritual training in the West as such to help somebody overcome other people's behavior and the effect on them. So we end up with a lot of whining people who say, well, I'm unhappy about this and unhappy about that. You know, I'm unhappy about the color of my toast when it comes out the toaster. You know, they start worrying about nothing and splitting hairs. You know, it's a mentality where you've got no inner training. You've got no sense of reason and higher thinking, so that the ignorance just remains as it is, and everyone thinks it's normal.
No, that's why I gravitated towards the Golden Dawn, or what's left of the Golden Dawn, and the books that you can use as a spiritual tool and for a spiritual practice, because I needed something. You need a system in a way. It's like you need an operating system on your computer.
Yeah.
But yeah,
we almost always need a direct communication of it in the West as well, because we highlight the use of the so-called left brain, or the logic side of our brain only, and therefore we receive a certain method of communicating the esoteric. For instance, my book is purposefully geared for people who aren't used to it and who only use their left brain. So it's mostly about logic and reason. on purpose.
Mm.
Yeah, I wanted to stay away from the airy fairy. I'm into God. I'm going to talk about God every 2 seconds and bore the living daylights out of you about it. You know, why would I bother with that? You know, okay, I've met God. Great. I'm going to go on about it. Now it's your turn. See, that's what I'm more interested in. You see what I mean? And let me help you get there. So when you meet God, you're going to be freaked out by how intelligent God is. Therefore, prepare yourself intelligent-wise a little bit, and then, you know, just focus on stillness, and you'll find your own inner peace. And there is heaven. My God, there it is. It's inside you all along. You know.
Right. Know thyself.
Yeah, that seems like a appropriate statement to end it on, Phil.
Yes, it is.
You just recapitulated the great work in a sentence. So, yeah,
he's getting better and better at that. I think he's froze.
Yeah,
he's probably froze. Running for his bag of peas right now. Are you there, Phil? Well, he's
ascended again, isn't he? He's frozen.
Right. By no means are we making fun of Phil. We're just, you know, poking a little. He's frozen in time. He's timeless. All right, guys. Yeah, but everybody in chat, thank you for joining. And you know, be what it will be. Can we come in from the out now? Just figure it out, work it out, and just live inward, love outward, and we can't go wrong, right? I mean, that's all we need to do is just love our ways forward, right? I mean,
yeah, he's gone now, isn't he?
He's gone now.
Yeah. All right, cool. Well, I mean, it always blows my mind talking to Phil. Oh, is he back?
He's back.
He's back.
Oh no, I think he's not in front of his computer though. Hey, Phil. No, he's done.
Hello.
Oh, hey, there he is.
What's up? What happened?
You got your peas or what? I think your computer overloaded.
Yeah, it's a bit hot. Yeah.
Right. But hey, I appreciate it, Phil. Thank you again, man.
Yeah.
And as soon as you can do this again, we've got tons more to talk about. I mean, you know, we didn't even get into the stuff we initially came to see how we do that. You know?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, no problem, man.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. Appreciate it.
Thanks for coming on, Jack. It's awesome. We got you here this time. Yeah, I think that's great.
Yeah. I mean, if we do it in the future, I'd have to do it at the weekend because I can't keep playing these COVID-19 cards with work. But it's the easiest time in existence to get a sick day off work. So
no, I never even thought of that.
Yeah. You tell them you're sick, and they're like, "Oh, don't fucking come in." Yeah.
All right, guys. Love, peace, chicken grease. I'm about to go cook some food.
Yeah. You all have a good one, man.
Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Take it easy, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Take it easy. Bye.